Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here at the inaugural PRISM event. Camille and team, thank you so much for inviting me. My name is Bilal. I am with DAA International, and we run airports. There we go. And I'm going to talk about our VR integration program. But just for some information on what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about the problem first of all. So why did we actually bring in VR to our company? I'm going to talk about the team. Who brought this in? What kind of a team did we need? I'm going to talk about the art of influencing, and then finally, the experience. Here we go. So starting off with an introduction, the why, when, where, and how. So as I said, I'm part of DAA International at the very corner there, and we're part of DAA Group. We run Dublin Airport, Cork Airport, ARI, which is duty-free, and then DAA International, which is advisory and consultancy around the world. We're proud to be in over 30 locations in 15 different countries. And a core tenet of what we do is innovate. We innovate in how airports are run, we innovate in how operations in an airport are run, and we innovate in how we can train people to run airports. And that brings me to the problem. What happened? Well, a core issue in all projects is if you blink, chaos ensues. And that's exactly what happened with us. We blinked, and with a lot of third-party unforeseen delays, our smooth planned departure hit a lot of turbulence. In any project, all stakeholders need to know where to go, what to do. They need to know what the facilities are, what systems are in place, and they need to have a dress rehearsal of sorts to get to know what they're walking into. But how do you do that when you don't have a physical terminal to walk into? How do you do that when your physical terminal looks like this? And that's where VR came into the picture. It's really important to have that entrepreneurial spirit and a culture where innovation is welcomed. The wrong culture will breed an environment where employees are afraid to say what if. They're afraid to take that leap. They're afraid to challenge the general kind of perception in the company. When I joined DAA International, I joined the opposite of this. I joined an organization that wasn't afraid to take a leap, wasn't afraid to say, what if? We actually have to talk to people and go up and down the chain of command and actually influence people to try a new thing, try a new technology. It was very hard to do. But that's where the diffusion of innovation comes in. Most of you probably know this, most of you have probably seen this, but this graph is not just a graph, it's a story. On the far left, we have the innovators. We have the people who aren't afraid to say what if. They're not afraid to take that leap, and they're willing to say, yes, let's do it. Then come the early adopters. These are people who, through social change, kind of see, yes, it's working, and they're willing to adopt. You've got the late majority, that once the early majority and the innovators kind of say, yes, this is working, they'll jump on the bandwagon. But then you've got the laggards, and these people may never join in, and that's okay. They may be forced to join in through company policy, but it's okay if they don't. And then you get to integration, buy-in, acceptance, trying to get that final nod of approval. Based on Rogers' model, the first 16% are critical for momentum. So you start off here, and then you finally get to the chasm, and that's the tipping point. You either go ahead or you fall back. Now, with most technology, it doesn't mean that it's bad, but it will kind of fall back. There won't be enough adoption. So what you want to do is get to that final 68%, the early majority and the late majority. You get there and you start finally making traction within your companies. And that's exactly what we did at DAA International. We came in and we started at the very top and we let that diffuse or that technology integration diffuse into the teams. You start with the decision makers and eventually the teams follow. And finally, the experience, the highs, but also the lows. So what we saw very early on is that the age group that tends to be the most open to change are the digital natives. And that's not a surprise. Everyone that's familiar with technology, everyone that's willing to kind of adopt and bring in new stuff, because they've grown up in that environment, will very easily adapt. But what's interesting is the most they're the most resistant to change were also the same age group. These were people who were very comfortable in the way things were going, and they were very conformative in the way they thought. And what we saw next was that the environment matters. Do your employees have willingness to learn? Are they willing to change? And eventually, that's what we got to. Internal barriers to adoption and understanding that employees who are not willing to change will not change. And how do you get them to change? How we did that was using data. We used a lot of data, but the 2 points I want to focus on is the training that goes before someone puts on a headset and then the experience itself. What we looked at was, at the very start, we looked at how people would feel when they put on the VR device, but also were they familiar with what they were getting into before they put on the VR device. So we had 2 elements to this training. We had the VR experience itself, and then we had the VR training. And luckily, we have a 5-star rating with over 400 participants across different countries with our VR training module. And then the actual VR experience varied from a 4.87 rating in phase 1, which we'll go through in a bit, and phase 2, which is currently ongoing with a 4.5 rating. So our program at DA International is essentially the future of airports. That's what we aim to be, that's what we're aiming to do. Now, we're proud to be one of the first companies in Saudi Arabia, in the Middle East, and one of the first in the Middle East overall to incorporate VR or virtual reality into airport operations. So this is airport training for ORAT, which is operational readiness in airport transition, and airfield driving permit training. We did this very fast with our partners RealSim. We developed phase 1, which was for ORAT familiarization, within a few weeks. We developed phase 2 within a few months, and that's a lot more technical in nature. But what you'll see is that there's a lot of different elements and different stages that get into actually making a functioning program. As Timmy mentioned, there's a lot of different steps. It takes a long time, and getting that done in a few weeks and getting that nod of approval was very hard to do. But you carry on. You keep doing it. You keep at it. Be very persistent. So we had our proof of concept done in December 2024, and we started training within 4 weeks of that. We had phase 2, where talks began in 2025, and we eventually have a functioning training module now built, deployed at Red Sea International Airport in Saudi Arabia. And the results, the VR experience. Now, the next few slides, I'm going to show you some screenshots of what we actually came up with RealSim, our partner. But then there's also a walkthrough video that shows what the experience was like. So this is from phase 1. This is ORAT training for all stakeholders in a different country. Now, mind you, there's a language gap. There's people who have never used VR before, and there's people who are not willing to change. But when you get that buy-in from the very top, eventually people start coming into it. And this is the airfield that we've developed for Red Sea International. It's a 1-to-1 model of what the actual airport looks like. And features. Now, Timmy would be happy to know that we've incorporated eye tracking into our models too. So when you're driving your vehicle on the airfield, we're able to see if you've looked at any foreign object debris on the airfield, if you've reported it to air traffic control. We're also making sure that we're monitoring your speed and we're monitoring where you're looking while you're driving that car. We've got a lot of enforcement in there, and we've also got summary sheets for all our trainers and the users themselves. And with that, I'll go on to the video. Enjoy. This is part of phase 1, which is ORAT familiarization training. So with the amount of stakeholders that are going through your training, you want to make sure that they're not veering off the paths they're supposed to be on. So we develop paths in the VR model just so people stayed on them and would not go on to different parts of the airport. The next part of the video now will focus on airfield driving permit training, where you're physically driving a car on the airfield.
Red Sea Tower. This is Ops 1. I'm holding short of runway 15 left, 33 right at the fire station access road, requesting clearance for runway inspection.
Ops 1, runway 15 left, 33 right is clear. Proceed with runway inspection and report when runway vacated.
Red Sea Tower. Ops 1, thank you, entering runway 15 left, 33 right for inspection. Will report when runway vacated.
So those were two phases. Part one was ORAT familiarization training, and part two was airfield driving permit training. Now, our goal with this project has always been to transform the future of airports, and we're proud to be one of the first ones to do it in the Middle East. This is the project that we're working on. This is Red Sea International Airport in Saudi Arabia. And with that, I'm going to conclude the presentation. Thank you all very much. It's a pleasure to be here.